What's going on, everybody? Well, this is the video that I said I'd probably do about changing out the toggle switches on my control board right over here, just on my left side right there. And I went ahead and got some illuminated toggle switches. Now I'm going to be adding a bar light, so I got the blue one for the bar light, and then I got the red illuminated switch for the marker lights. Now these are both 20 amp 12 volt 240 watt switches. Now these ones, because they're illuminated, they require a ground wire, so I got to add a ground wire to the system. So I went ahead and picked up some 12 volt stranded ground wire in white, because in automotive black and white are technically your ground colors. Then I got my nice little box of connectors so that I can go ahead and crimp those on and get a good connection. And then on top of that, when you're dealing with steel framing and stuff like that with DC, I went ahead and got some heat shrink too. This is all Harbor Freight stuff. Harbor Freight's totally awesome for that. I already showed you the screwdriver in the last video. So this one, the only tool I have to add is this one right here. These are the strippers. Now, for automotive purposes, I prefer these, okay? You can use standard electrical strippers like you would get at any Home Depot or hardware store or anything like that. These ones I happen to get ordered for me from Napa Auto Parts. These are automotive specific. They've got a little plier head on them. They've got a crimp. They've got two different types of crimpers. They've got a cutter, a secondary cutter down here in between the jaws, and then all your stripping heads so that you can strip all your wires, okay? So I'm gonna go ahead and get everything prepped up, and then I'm gonna show you how I go about changing these switches and how you have to open some of the doors on some of these fuse panels, okay? So I'll be right back. Okay, before I get anything taken apart or anything like that, I just want to go ahead and cover one thing. These switches have a locking nut system on them, so usually what I like to do before I even pull the panel out is I like to break loose the switch nut so that I know it's loose and it's easy to come out. That way I'm not trying to hold this while I'm trying to loosen it up. So I just take these, since they have the plier head on them, and give them a good little twist. Make sure you get a good bite on it right there. So I'm going to go ahead and remove that one and loosen it up, and then I'm going to get the one next to it, which happens to be my marker lights. Now this toggle was an ignition switch bypass. I put a screw through the master harness by accident, and I ended up having to hotline my starter directly from my battery. So that's what this toggle switch is for. So I can go ahead and remove this, since this is only a on switch where you have to hold it in place in order for the circuit to complete itself. So I'm going to remove that one, and I'm going to go ahead and put that new switch that I have for my future bar light that I'm adding to the front of my bus in that position. And then I'm going to go ahead and replace this other button toggle that I've got that went bad for my marker ring, okay? So I just get a good grip on these. You can use any pliers you want. These just happens to be the ones that I have. And you get these loosened up just like that, okay? So after that, you're gonna open the panel, and I'll grab the phone real quick and show you. Right down here on the side, it's probably really hard to see, but there's this little lever right here. You push it down, and that should unlock your panel. If not, lean out the window and give it a little bang, okay? So I'm gonna go ahead and get all this prepped, and then I'll show you what I got going on the outside and the inside again. So I'll see you in a second. All right, well, I've got everything prepped, and as you can see, I have the switch that I'm replacing out of the main panel so that I can go ahead and do what I have to do. Now, the cool thing about a lot of toggles, especially illuminated toggles, not so much the other ones, but illuminated toggle switches especially, usually have their indicator signs on them. You can go ahead and see that. You see the plus sign is the positive, followed by the switched leg, which is the wire that would go to whatever your power out is. And then this little symbol right here that one right there, that's your ground wire, okay? Now, some toggle switches don't have these. This one happens to have a ground, so I have to wire in a ground wire. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and take my wire right here that I already went ahead and pre-stripped, and I'm gonna match with my connector, okay? Now you never wanna strip these longer than this connection sleeve. When you put these together, I like to twist the wires, and then when I put the connector on, I slightly spin the connector like that. And what you want is you want your wire to come into your connector that far. There's a little tab in here on a lot of these. You can barely see on the very back, there's that little itty bitty dot back there. There's that tab right there. My wire just touched that tab. That's how you know you've put these in as far as you possibly can. Then you go ahead and grab your crimps and you give it a good crimp. Make sure you don't crimp it too hard because you can break the wires. Now, when it comes to AC wire that's stranded versus DC wire that's stranded, DC wire has a lot more copper strands in the count of the wire, and that's to accommodate for the amperage factors. There's always higher amps going through DC than there is AC, okay? Just keep that in mind. I'll strip this side just to show you how to do it, but in the meantime, I'm gonna go ahead and grab one of my heat shrink connectors. Now you're either gonna need a lighter or a torch or whatever you see fit to do this with. Honestly, I'm gonna actually grab one that's specified as ground, which will be these ones right here. Might end up having to be a bigger one like this just to fit over the connector itself. And I always like to do this just to make sure that you don't have any issues, okay? So these are actually really cool. You just put them over just like that, and you can go as far as you want. I like to go all the way up to where it meets right there, where it meets where the taper comes out for the connector, and then you just grab your lighter and literally shrink it in place just like that. Now you're not going to do any damage or nothing. I guarantee you all of your automotive technicians that do heat shrink connections, they're all using a lighter or a little mini torch or something like that. But that's what you end up with, is you end up with a nice good connection that covers your connection. Now as far as stripping these wires, always make sure you know what gauge you're dealing with. This is 14 gauge wire on stranded, which means if it was a solid wire, it would be a 12 gauge wire. So what I do, actually reverse that, it would be a 16 gauge. So I go right about there. You give it the crimp. If you hear it crunch wires, you're on the smaller size. You need to size up. So cut off whatever you crimped into and start over. Now the best way to do this is grab here, grab your wire, and then with your thumb and pull it straight off. Your thumb gives you the proper leverage that you need without bending the wires or anything like that, and you're just not trying to yank it or anything like that. So you go ahead and get that set, and now this side is set for the terminal connection to the ground, and I'll show you that on the outside. But in the meantime, I'm going to go ahead and get this switch installed and wired in. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to hook up my ground right off the bat, since I already have it stripped and ready to go. It should be a really tight fit. If it's not a tight fit, that's not good, okay? Now, if you saw my video that I did when I tested the power of this switch, you'll know right off the bat that my green wire on this line happens to be my switched leg, which is the power out of this switch, and my black wire happens to be the power in. Now, most of the time black is considered ground, okay? But some companies just use whatever colors they want, okay? So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and remove the black, since I know that's my power in. And you always want to give these a little bit of a wiggle when you take them off. And I'll pull my green there. See, this switch is done. We already tested it. We know it's not good. It is one of those ones where it's a pull plunger. So you pull it out and it's on, you push it in and it's off. And now I'm gonna replace it with my new one. So I'm gonna take my green and I'm gonna put it on the little headlight symbol right in the middle. And then I'm gonna take my black and I'm gonna put it on the plus sign signal on this switch. That way that's all set up. Now I'm gonna take my ground wire and I'm gonna feed it down so that it goes down and out through my panel. Now keep in mind, I do have all the power off to be able to do this. I never recommend doing this with your power on, okay? And then all you do after that is you just unscrew your lock that you have on this. It's a little locking ring that threads on. You put it through your hole that you're replacing your switch in, and then tighten it back up. After that, it's just a matter of getting it all hooked up, turning it on, and then figuring out whether it's up for the light on or down for the light on. And then you can go ahead and loosen it and adjust it, you know, flip it 180 degrees, and you pretty much should be good. So we're gonna get that in just like that. Perfect. So now, as you can see, you can pick this up, because if you're not careful, you can really do a lot of damage to your wires. I'm gonna set that back in just like that. And as you can see, I have my red toggle here and I have my blue toggle here. So once I have my bar light, I'm gonna go ahead and wire that in. But in the meantime, I might just leave this as it is, or at least run the leads out to it. That way I have a power in and a power out, plus a ground. And then all I have to do is just hook up my wires to my light after that. So let's go ahead and jump outside and I'll show you what I'm dealing with. Okay, well, I'm on the outside, and as you can see, this is the fuse panel. Now it's got all the circuit breakers and everything in it. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and hook up my ground wire now, but before I do that, I'm gonna show you where I'm gonna be hooking it up, and then I'm gonna explain a couple of things when it comes to adding different lights that weren't originally in your bus, just so that you have an idea. Okay, so I'm gonna grab this phone and I'm gonna bring you up. So as you can see right here, this is in fact the ground. You can see all the different white wires go into it. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take this one after I put this connector on it right here, and I'm gonna go ahead and add it to this ground bar right here. It's just basically a bolt. This one happens to be a 11 millimeter. And then you also have your circuit breakers. Now, I always recommend deep sockets whenever you're using circuit breakers, and extensions if necessary. They're usually a 10 millimeter. But what you're looking for when you're adding a light is you're looking for a circuit breaker that has a wire in but no wire out, okay? Now, I have one right here, which was actually the one that I was using for my starter bypass, which I just removed. It's actually right down there on the ground. It was a headache dealing with that, okay? But I don't need it there anymore, so I go ahead and take it out. Now, this circuit breaker right here had nothing else attached to it, so when I go to add my bar light system in, I can go ahead and pull my power off of that. Every single one of these usually have an amp tag to help you out. And then another thing you want to take into consideration to help you out when you're working on a school bus is, you see this label right here on these wires, these little white tags? They're numbered. Every single circuit that is in a school bus has a circuit number, okay? So that'll help you kind of decipher what's going on. So I'm gonna go ahead and get my ground wire hooked up and then test my upper marker light ring and make sure they work. So I will see you guys in a bit, and you'll get to see them light up and how the switch works. Okay, well, I have the ground hooked up and everything, so I'm gonna go ahead and turn the key and check the outside lights. So I have the switch down so that I know that it's off. I'm gonna go ahead and turn my key on. You're gonna hear a little bit of a buzzing. Turn the switch on. There you go. You can see right there how it lights up, hopefully. And now I'm gonna go check the outside ring and make sure they're on. So it looks like I have all my lights on. Yep, you can see the one right there. You see how it's lit up? Now I know they work. So if you got any questions, go ahead and leave them down in the comments down below. If you liked anything about this particular video, do me a favor, leave a like on it. It really helps out a lot. And then share it with a friend if you think they might be interested. Subscribe to the channel if you want to see more cool stuff or you want to see more helpful stuff. And don't forget your notification bell. I'll see you guys later.